So here's that ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone. Here it is in June and July. It moves north of the equator, and it's more pronounced over land, which once again, now we can relate the thermal equator to this idea. Whereas in the December and January period, of course, it moves to the south, and it's more exaggerated there over land masses. All right, we've been looking a lot at some schematics, some models, arrows, visualizations. Next, let's now actually try to apply those and see if we can see patterns on this map here. This is the December and January pattern, so of course along the ITCZ we're going to have equatorial low pressure drop, and we're going to have high precipitation, and corresponding to that the world's rainforests. But then, of course, to the north and to the south, we're going to find the subtropical high pressure, the dry deserts, and we can kind of see that. If you look there in Australia, much of Australia, it's quite dry. You can see the Sahara Desert just north of the equatorial low pressure there in Africa. You can see parts of Mexico that's quite dry. You can see parts of the Andes Mountains that are quite dry. Continue on, we have the mid-latitude areas, and those are going to be where we're going to have migrating low-pressure zones. And then eventually we have our polar high-pressure zones. So this here is the December and January pattern. Now let's look at June and July. All of this then migrates to the north. So we see a changing pattern. And so now that subtropical high-pressure zone, which was just there in Central America, has now moved and is now up there in the southern part of the United States and parts of Mexico. Whereas now the subtropical high pressure in the southern hemisphere has also moved up accordingly. And so that equatorial low pressure trough, now we look at the southern part of the Saharan Desert. Southern part of the Saharan Desert now has a good amount of precipitation there. And so this is an area of the world in which they have a dry period and then a extremely wet period. That's going to be a focal point of climate regions when we move on. Of course, the mid-latitudes, that all migrates as well. And here in the United States, we're minimally affected by the polar high pressure in June and July. We know this. Very rarely do we have temperatures that get down into the 40s or 50s in the summertime. Very, very rarely. But when we do, that's probably an indicator that the polar high pressure has dipped down and it's starting to affect us just for a moment. It's not going to last too long in the summertime.